Welcome back to a very special edition of Dating Intentionally. I'm Talia, I'm a dating coach, and I'm also a big movie nerd. This is the first episode of a new series I'm trying out called Rom Com versus Real Life, where we take a closer look at romantic comedy movies and what they teach us about dating and relationships. I'm joined by my lovely fiance and fellow movie nerd, Johnny, and we're kicking off this special series with the movie He's Just Not That Into You. Are you ready, Johnny?
I'm so ready.
Yeah.
I'm so into you. Let's do it.
I'm honestly really into you too. Okay. We're going to get into what this movie says about dating relationships, what it gets right, and what it gets wrong. And look, I know, you know, we all know these are movies. They're scripted, but I think that they affect or at least reflect our dating culture and can influence our perspective on relationships and romance. Would you agree?
It's definitely very scripted. And I know we're going to get into it later, but it very much did feel like these were little like vignettes in a self-help book. And
Which it was. So, just to make sure we're all on the same page, this podcast probably isn't going to make any sense if you haven't seen the movie. So if you haven't seen the movie, go watch it and then come back and listen if you want to hear our thoughts. And if you have seen the movie, you're in the right place. And I don't know if you know this, listener, I did not know this, that He Is Just Not That Into You is actually a book. That's, it's the same name as the movie. It's the same name as the book. It's by this guy, Greg Behrendt, and Liz Tuccillo. I am butchering these names. I don't know.
At least one of whom actually shows up in the movie in a cameo.
Wait, which one?
I think it's the guy.
Damn. Okay. Well,
I don't know what he looks like, but I was reading afterwards. It's like he's some character somewhere in this movie who's there for one line.
Love it.
It's like, okay, that's cool.
Apparently the book is based on an episode of Sex and the City, which actually kind of makes sense. The book came out in 2004. The movie came out in 2009. The book provides a close-up look at common dating scenarios and basically tells women to stop analyzing the behavior of men and face the simple truth. He's probably just not that into you. And I read like the first chapter of this book and I found it to be very condescending, to be honest.
Yeah. In what way, I guess? Because I know there's a lot of it, and I know that we're going to talk about later, like what's changed in the past 15 years since this movie's come out, or I guess 20 whatever years since the book came out. But what didn't you like?
Again, I just didn't like the guy's tone. It was just very much like, you silly girl. He's just not that into you, obviously.
This is completely unrelated to that, but I hate the title of this so much. It is so hard to say, and it sounds like every rom-com ever.
That's true. You really had trouble remembering the name of this movie.
He's just not that into you. It's like any of those three words from that could be a movie title. Like, why do we have all of these?
He's just you.
He's just not. Or that into you.
Yeah, no. I like the title of the movie because I think also it is the advice. It's the thesis of the movie. So how we're going to do this, we're first going to like basically talk about what happens in the movie. We'll spend a bunch of time on that. And then we're going to get into the messages of the movie. And at the end, we'll rate it, on our scale of a rom-com versus real life. How realistic is it or how delusional is it? And I'll also share some of what you guys submitted about what you think about the movie, because I did ask on Instagram. So Johnny, why don't we go over the cast and characters, because this movie has 9 main characters.
So this is going to be so hard to keep
I know.
straight. Even watching this movie and having literally a diagram, which I'm sure we could share somewhere in front of me, it's not straightforward.
But when is love ever straightforward?
When you don't need a diagram to explain it.
True. Well, yeah, this movie follows 9 people's love lives, which is part of why I think this movie didn't get great feedback from critics, and like a lot of people saw it because I just didn't have time to get into the characters. Like, they're all stereotypes. And I want to just also point out all the main actors were white, even though it took place in Baltimore, which I feel like in 2009, I'm honestly surprised. Like, did we not have diversity?
I guess I'm not surprised.
I cast. I don't know. Yeah, it was a little bit of a bummer.
It's weird that they picked Baltimore. If they you could have picked anywhere. I think they picked Baltimore because one of the directors or someone was from Baltimore.
Yeah.
But like all the interior shots were not shot in Baltimore. They're all shot in LA. They just did like 2 weeks outside.
Had no effect on the story whatsoever. It could have been like nameless city. Like because other rom-coms definitely have the city incorporated. This one did not.
If it's going to be in Baltimore, make 6 of the 9 of them black. Like, it's not that hard.
No, I know. 2009, I don't know. So we have the main character, our protagonist, Gigi, who's played by Jennifer Goodwin. She is a hopeless romantic who frequently misreads men's signals. Did you add that line to the script?
Yeah, these are my
These are your
descriptions of
okay. Like, where
each
did
of
you
these
get these
characters.
from? We have Connor, played by Kevin Connolly, who I know from Entourage. I think he's an Entourage. Oh my God, am I?
I don't know
No,
him.
he is an Entourage. Yeah, yeah. He's a real estate agent who is secretly in love with Anna, who is played by Scarlett Johansson. Because who would it be secretly in love with her? Come on.
I'm
Um,
secretly and I guess now publicly in love with her. So
me
there
too.
you go.
Um, she is a yoga instructor involved with a married man named Ben. And Ben is played by Bradley Cooper, who is married to Janine, but he's having an affair with Anna. Janine is played by Jennifer Connelly, and she is just very wrapped up in building her house in this movie. The
I like
tiles.
that she's like character who's not paying attention to her relationship. She's
I
really into expensive home improvement.
I interpreted that very differently. I think she was like trying to make the perfect house because she didn't have the perfect relationship.
Well, I think, yeah, she was distracting herself from all of the relationship problems by being like, which tile do I want?
She did a lot of caressing of shelves.
Uh, yeah.
Anyway, we also have another main character, Alex, played by Justin Long. Where did he go? You know, I love Justin Long, who is a bar manager who is also like the voice of reason in the movie. He gives Gigi a lot of advice, and hint, hint, that's her main love interest in the end.
Whoa.
Spoilers. We've all seen the movie at this point. Sorry, guys. We also have Neil, played by Ben Affleck. So Neil is connected to Beth, who's friends with Janine and Gigi. That's how they're all connected.
Some of these people work together. Some of them live together.
Right. It's all connected. Beth is played by Jennifer Aniston, and she and Neil want to get married. Well, she wants to get married. He doesn't want to get married. They've been together for 7 years. And then, yeah, like obviously drama ensues there. And finally, we have Mary, played by the lovely Drew Barrymore, who actually is also an executive producer of this movie. Her
easily
production
the
company,
best character.
Easily. Yeah.
And has I'm pretty sure, the least screen time.
Yeah, sadly. Mary works in advertising, and she's frustrated with modern communication and dating. So funny you write modern, because the communication used in this movie.
It was funny, and like
I
didn't have time to look it up. It was modern at the time. Mm-hmm. They were using MySpace, Talia. MySpace. But I didn't get time to look up, like, I feel like that's a common thing people are definitely probably telling you all the time. It's like, I'm so tired of this modern dating. I just want to go back like it used to be, you know, just meet people organically. No? People don't say that?
No, people do say that. And I'm like, well, I don't think it was easier.
I don't know if it was easier or not, but I just think it's like the same thing that you hear a lot. It's like people just don't want to work anymore. And then you look that up and it's like, oh, that's been a headline in a newspaper article every year since there's been newspapers. And it's someone put together like 150 years of people saying nobody wants to work anymore. And it's just like, okay, no, that's just what
just the
people say.
The vibe.
And I wonder if this is the same thing where it's like, it used to be so much easier. And it's like, it was just different.
Yeah, it was easier when, you know, there was a dowry and
and you had no control over your life. You had no control.
So easy. Yeah, so easy. So you included this wonderful diagram, which I'll share on Instagram, and I'll link it in the show notes of like how everyone's connected. And basically, just to go over it, we have Gigi, main character, who's going to be into Alex, who is friends with Connor. I think they live together. I think Alex and Connor
live together. Gigi, Beth, and Janine work together.
Yes.
Janine's married to Ben. Ben and Neil are friends. And so I guess that kind of makes sense. You've got Gigi, Beth, and Janine who all work together, and 2 of those people are in serious relationships or married, and those people are friends. That kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
But the rest of the connections are just like very loose. And it's not like all these people ever get together in one space in this movie.
It's weird now looking at this diagram that we never saw a scene with like Ben, Neil, and Janine and Beth, like the 2 couples. Yeah. Because if they're all friends, why are they all we saw a lot of Ben and Neil. Actually, for some reason I realized I thought Ben and Neil were brothers for some reason, but they're not. They're just friends.
Yeah, they're just friends. There's a lot of scenes where a lot of women get together and talk about their relationships.
Mm.
And there's really not much or anything where men get together and do it in this movie.
Do you think that's realistic though?
I think the one only scene that I remember from this movie where two guys are talking about their relationship is when Neil and Beth have split up,
Yeah.
and Neil's like living on his boat, and Ben comes over and he's like, "Oh, did like the women send you to see if I'm still okay or something to that effect?" And I was just like, oh, that's a pretty realistic
Yeah.
scene.
And then we have the one time like Connor and Alex, like Alex asked Connor about a date and he was like, it was whatever. And that was it.
100%. When I had a roommate before I moved to Seattle and we met, I would come home from dates and he'd be like, "So how was it?" I was like, "It was good." Or like, "It was all right." And that would just be the end of it. There's nothing else. Like, we never talked about it.
And yeah, it's so real. Well, I do think there's some things like that this movie got absolutely correct. But let's get into the synopsis. So we start the movie with a scene from Gigi's childhood where she's on the playground and a boy comes over and tells her she looks like
Pile of dog poo.
a pile of dog poo, which was, we had a very long discussion about this offline, how it was probably the least creative insult from a 4-year-old possible.
Yeah, I feel like I said this to you earlier. I'm like, I feel like they should just let this kid ad lib this scene because as written, it was like it was just so bad.
Yeah, it
It's
was
like,
pretty bad.
you look like poo, you smell like poo, you're made out of poo, and it's like, nah. Some
No, I
kid
don't
could
think
come up with a better
a
line.
4-year-old will be way more creative. Anyway, she runs to her mom, and her mom's like, Gigi, that boy said you look like dog poo because he likes you. And that is just where she starts her life, her I guess her perception of how men are supposed to treat her if they like her, which is
Oh, that's
horrible.
why I treat you so bad all the time. You know, it's the only
Oh,
way for you to know that I really care.
oh, it all
So
makes so much
it all
sense
makes
now.
sense. I know. So, I mean, is this realistic? Did you have this talk with your mother?
Mm, no, I don't
No.
think I really got the message of if a guy is treating you like crap, it's because he likes you. I got the message more like you need to make a guy chase you, which is, I don't think is really relevant, or it's not like the other side. I guess
Well,
it kind of is. That's like I kind of have to treat a guy like crap for him to like me.
hmm.
That's kind of, I guess, more the message
I
I got.
guess you don't really care then, because you don't treat me that way.
No, that's, yeah, I guess I really don't. I don't like you at all. I treat you so well.
Jeez. One of my favorite bits in the movie that we went back and I showed you, like the first 2 seconds of the film, there's they're just going through this playground. There's a swing set, and there's two kids on the swing. One boy is like pushing an empty swing, and then there's a girl next to him with a teddy bear in the swing, and she's pushing her swing. And I'm just like, those are the two happiest people in this
You're
movie
right.
for
Those
sure.
they're just playing by
This little
themselves.
girl just like not going to pay attention to any of this nonsense.
Yeah, the piece looks peaceful. So this movie employs the whole, I don't know what you want to call it. It's a cinematic tool or like whatever of people talking to the camera, like interview style, documentary style, like that. Oh, like why doesn't he text you? Because this. And like they have these little vignettes of women rationalizing men's behavior from all over the world in just different
A good
scenarios.
montage.
Yeah, a little montage of like, oh, he didn't call because he died. Like he didn't call because he's just really busy at work, or maybe he just got stuck in traffic. I don't know, just like all these different excuses.
Yeah.
But none of the excuses are, or none of the reasons are he doesn't like you, right? I think this is definitely a theme throughout the movie where it's like, why are women making up these stories to make themselves feel better? And I think people, I don't think it's just women to do this. I think guys do this too. But
I
like,
mean, maybe, but I guess this is when we're going to get into it. But like, what was with every single woman in this movie? Every time one of her friends was like, "Why, why won't he call me back?" All of her friends are just like looking at her and lying to her, and they're like all
right.
like giving them like sidelong looks. It's like, "Ooh, we all got to lie to her now." It's like, don't do that. That doesn't help
Yeah.
anyone.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's kind of why the author wanted to write the book, right? Is because we're making ourselves delusional with all these stories of excuses or reasons. And it's like, but the fact is that they're not calling. The fact is they're not asking you out. So and I think that is honestly valuable advice. It's like, look at the actions. And that's what it means. It's not all
Yeah,
the stories. Um,
Justin Long's character says it to Gigi like halfway through the film.
yeah.
It's just like explicitly says, if a guy doesn't call you, it's because he doesn't want to call you. And guess
But we
what?
don't want to believe that. Like we don't it's
That's
like
the
our
reason.
little egos can't handle that.
Your ego can handle it.
Yeah, mine.
Everyone's ego can handle it.
Yeah.
Everyone
Yeah.
doesn't like you. It makes sense.
It makes sense. So we have our protagonist Gigi and Connor. They go on a very mediocre date, and I honestly love the moment where like the waitress comes over and she's like, "So you guys want a second drink?" And Gigi's like, "Maybe." And Connor like looks at her and he like tastes like, "All right." Like it takes him a long time to get to
Yeah.
that yes. He's like, "Oh yeah, I guess." And then after the date, I love their two completely separate reactions. Like Connor, the guy immediately calls his booty his situationship, which is Anna Scarlett Johansson,
Yeah. He's like,
and
oh, been thinking about you. It's like,
yeah, then
yeah.
Gigi immediately calls her friend. She's like, I think it went well. And it's just like, that to me was so real. I don't
Yeah.
know. What do you think?
That was pretty real. I don't know how to solve that. It's hard to
No.
leave a date and be like, thank you, person I've spent, an hour with. I can't wait to never talk to you or see you again.
No,
Even if
you
you feel
leave
that
it
way.
open.
Yeah.
That's like why I give this advice of just like the point of the first date is to get to the second date. Don't plan your entire future. Or like, I also think a great date, you have to take it with a grain of salt. It's
Yeah.
easy to kind of like show up and play first date,
Yeah.
do your whole little routine with someone. And then, yeah, I don't know.
And yeah, for an hour, like you can be very pleasant to pretty much anyone for an hour.
Pretty much.
And you can leave most of those first, like, I don't know, most of my first dates leave being like, all right, that was at least an all right time. And like maybe I had a really good time, but you never know what the other person's thinking.
Yeah, they're maybe calling their hot
Yeah, they're
situationship that won't sleep
leaving
with them.
directly from the date to go sleep with someone else. Yeah.
I feel like that is something I have done. I'm sorry.
Good to know.
I'm not proud of it, but probably like in my youth. Then we have a scene where Ben, played by Bradley Cooper, and then Anna, they meet at the handy market. And I like that you had to rewind the movie to get the name of the market. You're like,
Well,
what?
I was like, what is this? It was like a small grocery store or something. But then they like panned up to the name and they held it there a little too long. And I was like, is this significant? And it was just like the handy market.
They
And
did actually, one of the characters did actually say handy market later.
yeah.
If
And
that
so I wonder
helps.
if that's like a well known thing in Baltimore, maybe. I have no
Maybe.
idea.
We didn't look that up. Anyway, so there's this grocery store meet cute where Ben lets Anna go ahead of him in line. She wins a prize, which wasn't an empty cooler. I don't know. It was
Literally just like an empty small cooler, and she was very excited.
She was like,
she
I
had
never win anything. And she
Yeah.
like flings her arms around Ben. And I'm like thinking, if I was in that scenario, no way am I hugging a stranger behind me. What, no matter,
No way.
even if he's as hot as Bradley Cooper, who, as listeners know, is like my type.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a movie, so people just don't act realistically.
No,
But
I
there
know.
are a lot of moments where like people walked up to a stranger and told them their life story, and I'm like, that's not normal behavior.
Well, so they do that. Then like, right, they meet, they go outside and they're like chatting. And we somehow see a scene where like Anna is saying something about her mom, or she's like basically like, and that's why I'm screwed up.
Yeah.
She kind of just trauma dumped or overshared with him or something. And they like did that whole awkward dance of like, he reveals he's married. She's like, well, can I just ask you for career advice? Which is like one of the biggest red flaggy things of this moment.
Well, he like offers. He's like, I know like music producers, and you're like a struggling artist, and like they never really talk about that. They have one conversation later on where, like, oh, that went well, and it's like she's just a yoga instructor. They don't really ever focus on this other thing that she's allegedly doing.
They show her singing at the end of the movie. Like she's trying to make it as a
That's
singer, I
true.
guess. Okay, Johnny, here's a scenario for you. You go to the market, you're picking up some groceries. You meet someone who's as hot as ScarJo, and they're like,
being a
and they're-
6-pack of beer.
right. And they're like, I actually I'm trying to break into aerospace. Like, do you have any contacts? What do you do?
Just say no and leave.
You would help her?
Is that the right answer? No.
I don't know. I don't know if
would
there's
I
a
do?
right or wrong answer.
I don't like have a card. I'm not going to give this woman my number, probably. I guess I give her my email address. That's like the most professional thing I could do.
But there was a vibe, right? That's why it was weird. Because
Oh, they were super flirty.
Right, they were so flirty, like, they were clearly into each other, and then Ben gets into the car with Neil, who was just waiting for him that
Yeah,
whole
he's just sitting
time.
in the car, just like, I wonder what he's doing in there. It took a really long time
This
to buy a 6 pack of beer.
it was so weird. Then we go to Neil and Beth finds out that her younger sister is getting married, which is such a this is so played out in movies, and I just feel like in TV too, like the older single sister and then the younger sister gets married. It's just it shows up in a lot of movies.
If it's
Um,
happening to my younger sibling, what am I doing wrong?
yeah,
Literally nothing.
your younger sister's getting married
My
before you.
true. My sister's getting married in a month, and yeah, so that's the only reason I proposed to you. It's just
Right.
like I have to get
You have to
married now
catch
if my
up.
sister is getting married. God,
You proposed to, oh, that why you proposed a month after
yeah,
she
one
got
month later.
engaged. But I guess we needed like an inciting incident for this couple to like get back on this marriage topic that they clearly had been talking about. And Neil's position is that he doesn't want to get married. He says people who need to get married are insecure. He later says no guy wants to get married. He's just very against this. He's like, why do we need a certificate? Do you know anyone in your life with who's like the whole, why do we need a certificate? Like, why do we have to do this?
Some of my friends were together for like 10 years and like lived together and didn't get married until, yeah, it was something like 10 years later. We went to their wedding last year. And it was like, I don't know if they were having these conversations, but I never looked at them and were like, yeah, these two aren't going to make it just because they're not married. It was like,
Yeah.
yeah, they were fine. If you didn't really want to get married, I would probably be open to not being married for longer. Like, it's not that I would have never proposed, but it's like, I think a lot of men are like, it's not going to change anything.
Do you think we should reconsider?
Yeah, we should probably think this through again.
um, no, I think I don't know anyone personally who is like, and I guess, well, okay, fine. I was in this relationship with my ex. Like this was a thing. He just didn't have a strong desire to get married. But he wasn't like this strongly against it of like, why would like people who get married are insecure? Like that's like a very strong stance.
I
Um,
think that's a common thing. Men aren't
yeah.
usually like, can't wait to get married. It's not like a men fantasy. It's a woman's fantasy mostly.
You think
Like
so?
girls
Yeah.
think about it. Men are like, I'll get married to this woman. I like her. I love her.
Yeah, well, it's because partly because movies like this, where basically every woman in this movie is obsessed with marriage, and that's kind of that's like the main storyline female protagonists in movies get from Disney movies, like from movies that are G and PG rated, like that
Yeah.
we're watching as little babies, So it's like, yeah, it makes sense that we're way more oriented around being chosen, being selected, like, to
It
be
was just
married.
sad because like these
I
women,
know.
a lot of them clearly have a lot going on outside of dating and marriage, but the only thing they ever talked about ever was either dating, men, or getting married. And it was just like, you're all very well off professionally. Clearly, you have
Yeah.
other parts of your lives going on, but we're not. I guess you never talk about that. And for the sake of this movie, we didn't anyway.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but it's again, it's about the message, right? It's like
The message
just
here
that.
was as a woman, you have to wait for a man to call you.
Yeah,
So weird. Even, I forget who says it to Gigi, but she's like, you could just call him. And she does.
right.
And then she like,
So we're gonna get to that in a minute.
oh, okay.
So then we get to Gigi, it's like a week goes by since her date with Connor,
She's
and
obsessively looked at her voicemail every 10 seconds, keeps calling it. And for anyone here under the age of 30, a voicemail's a thing where you can leave a message to someone on a phone.
oh, you mean like a voice memo?
Yeah, like that, only it was on a physical tape that you had to take out of a machine and flip it over if you wanted more space. Anyway,
Wow. Okay, I have so many questions. I'm remembering voicemail in my life. Obviously, growing up, I'm not remembering like a tape, but I believe
yeah,
you.
back in the day, there were physical tapes, people.
For reference, everyone, I'm 32. Yeah, I remember like the phone with the cord on the wall and everything. So she's checking her voicemail, and I'm just like thinking about dating in the age of voicemail and how that worked. Like you have to have, I guess that's if it's the only way to communicate, or like one of the main ways to communicate is leaving each other voice messages in your voice mailbox.
Because you don't have cell phones
Yeah,
that
you don't have
like,
cell
you don't,
phones,
well, they had cell phones, but not smartphones. This was
right?
2009.
But like, yeah, this is pre-social media, this movie, which is again, I would love to see this movie remade now. It'd be ridiculous. But it's just the idea of asking someone out on a voicemail. Like, we don't call each other. We don't leave each other voicemails. Like, millennials are allergic to voicemail. Like, I hang up before I leave voicemail to anyone and just text them. That's how usually if I miss them on the phone, I'll not leave a voicemail and just text.
Yeah,
So,
I do like my voicemail now, like just transcribes it automatically and I'll just read
right,
it. So it's like, okay, perfect.
we don't even need to listen to voicemails anymore. So just like this culture of the voicemail culture is very interesting to me. So then, okay, so Gigi doesn't hear from him, so she decides to do this unhinged thing, and she does a drive-by at the bar he mentioned he hangs out at, hoping to run into him. What did you think of this? Have you done this?
No, I have not done this. I'm trying to think, like, I can't even imagine what is the scenario where this happens to me.
I've
Like,
definitely done this.
well, that's not surprising to me.
In college, though, in college, like where there are way more condensed common spaces, they were like, if I knew a guy I was crushing on, like to do his homework or whatever, like in a common area, I would like definitely look cute and
Okay,
like
I can
try to
see
walk
that.
through at that moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to imagine like being like, oh, this woman always goes to this bar on Tuesdays, so I'll just go there and maybe we'll run into each other. That's so crazy.
It is crazy. What do you think the modern day version is of this?
I'm trying to think of what digital space would make sense for this. It's like, I don't know, liking an Instagram post or something.
Yeah, I think there's something to do with Instagram. I mean, I've never done this, and I think this is if you do this, I think this is unhinged, but I also understand people, you know how you can have a close friends list on Instagram? I've heard of people putting only their crush on their close friends list.
Amazing.
And so you don't know if you're on someone's close friends list.
Yeah, you don't know how
Actually,
big it
maybe
is.
you do. Maybe you
I think
do.
you do know. I
Oh,
think
you
I've
do know, right? Because it's green. The circle's green around the
it's
stories.
different in some way.
Anyway, they will like repost something if they think their crush missed it on their close friends list, or like will post things just so their crush sees it. It is I think that's like kind of the similar version of this.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, she does this drive by, and that's where she meets Alex.
Yeah, and just
Um,
imagine from her perspective. And like I think we had one scene before where these two are like in the apartment together, but Gigi's just like goes up and this random bartender's just like, "Oh, he's not here. He's not coming in today." And like imagine like some bartender telling you that, being like, "Are you friends with?" And like literally they happen to live together. He just
yeah,
like goes like, "I'll call him right now."
that's a coincidence. That's what happens. He's like, Gigi's like, oh, I'm waiting for someone, and and Alex is like, oh, and she was like, okay, I met this guy Connor, and he's like, oh, I know Connor. He's not coming.
Yeah.
you know, she did this cute thing where like she was making up a story, but then she could tell Alex was like really onto her, and she's like, okay, I went out this guy Connor, and like he
Yeah.
was like, wait, and then Alex is nice to her, and he buys her a drink. He hangs out with her. They've closed down the bar together. Like he's just chatting with her, and he's explaining to her that Connor's never to call. He kind of explains to her like he won't call because he doesn't want to. And this is like if you want to, this is the other side of like, if he doesn't want to, he won't. And
Yep.
that's the advice that Alex gives her.
And like she doesn't really take it home yet. Like she's like kind of skeptical.
Well, it's hard to internalize that advice when your whole life you've believed that if a guy is treating you like crap, he likes you, and you are surrounded by women who tell you delusional stories about like exceptions and like
Yeah.
reasons he isn't calling that aren't he doesn't like you.
And
you
it does
know?
click for her later on, but it's just
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's so weird. Like all of your friends are like, it's gonna work out, and they're like looking at each other like it's obviously not gonna work out. And then you've got this
Yeah.
stranger just being like, no, I live with this man. I'm telling you, he's not going to call you. And she's just like, well, maybe he will.
I related pretty hard to Justin Long's character in this movie. I was like, am I Justin Long? Like, if Instagram wasn't a thing, is this where people are getting their no nonsense dating advice? Is from the
Yeah, you should open a
bartender?
bar and just be a
Yeah.
bartender. It's perfect for you.
Oh yeah. Also, I noticed throughout the movie, like Gigi would be like, "That could have been the guy of my dreams," and I think this is a very accurate perspective on in early dating, where it's like you meet someone and it's like all full of potential, and we focus so hard on that potential, and it's like you don't like that was a very mediocre date she was thinking about, you know.
He asked her about it, and he's like, "Was it?" And she was like, "It wasn't even that good of a date."
Right.
Like,
And it's like, wait, oh, actually, she didn't have that much fun. So
yeah,
then, okay, this is when we get to the part where Gigi's with her coworkers, Janine and Beth, and one of them suggests that she call him. because she's still waiting for this voicemail, even though she's talked to Alex. She doesn't believe that he's right. She
Mhm.
still is holding out for Connor. And so she writes a script, a voicemail script to
It's so
leave for
so
Connor.
bad.
And it goes horribly wrong. She makes like a pretty transphobic joke in the in the script somehow. Have you ever left a rambling voicemail to someone like this?
I'm sure I have. I mean, I
Yeah.
do this to my friends all the time intentionally. I'll just ramble,
It's
but I
true.
don't. I don't think I've ever called like a date and been like, "Oh, by the way, it's me. We went out on a date. I'm really busy right now. Wow, whew, geez, it's really hot out here today. Like, what? This isn't real,
I
is
think I'd
this?"
still call you back. You sound cute. um, no, but do you think, okay, this actually made me wonder, do you like, because now we voice memo each other. Do you think there are people out there who are like scripting voice memos like this?
I'm
Like, that's,
sure.
otherwise it's like really like, what was I saying? Oh, and then it's like fumbling, like,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, that's
what
the
happens?
best part of text messages or email and any written media is like you can edit it as much as you want
You
before you
could be
send
way
it.
more articulate than you actually are.
Yes, you could, unlike I am in this conversation.
Yep. Okay, so then we have a scene with Mary and Anna, and they're getting pedicures. And which is like again another classically like a rom-com trope that women get pedicures together. I don't think I've ever gotten a pedicure with a friend.
Oh, really?
Um I know what happens, but I feel like it's like now a very nice solo activity you do and you're just like looking at your phone, you're reading, you're like, it's like, don't bother me.
Hmm.
Anyway, so Mary's telling Anna about a guy who left his wife for her friend, whatever. It's like a lore, it's like a legend. And it's a story about the exception. It's like,
I will
well,
say
this happened.
I like Mary a lot in this, but she is the worst at like all these magical stories. She's like, "Well, I know a guy who smelled like a guy who once did this thing." And it's like, "What?" Like, and she does this a couple times. I think she has like some really good scenes, but every time she did that I was like, "Stop it. What are you
Yeah.
doing?"
Yeah, well, she's proving the point of the movie, which is that we should be telling each other these stories. And then Anna calls Ben, who brushes her off because she's like, well, you said you had contacts for me so I can be a singer. And he was like, I can't do this. And then she runs to Connor, which I thought
Yeah,
was like very
that was
realistic. Like,
very real.
you get rejected by the guy you like, so you run to your situationship guy who you don't really like, but you want
Yep.
attention.
Hmm.
Have you ever done that?
Obviously.
Yeah, okay. I feel like that's that's a pretty realistic thing. So then there's this isn't like a really like a important scene, but I just wanted to touch on this. Connor and Anna are playing a game, smart, funny, or sexy, cute, and you can only
Oh
be
no.
you can only be like you can either be smart or you're funny, and then you can either be sexy or cute. You can't be sexy and cute, and you can't be smart and funny. So Johnny, am I smart or funny, and am I sexy and cute or cute?
And it's wrong for me to say sexy and cute, right? I think that's literally what he says in
Yeah,
the movie.
yeah,
He's like, "Yeah, you're
he says
sexy
that.
and cute."
And she's like, "No, you have to I can't be sexy and cute. Those are both physical." It's like ScarJo.
ScarJo, come on. You are funny and sexy.
I was gonna say the same thing about you.
Wow.
Love it. Thanks for playing. So
Anytime.
okay, so then we have a scene with Beth and Neil. So back to the almost married, not married couple. And I wrote down if I was Jen's dating coach, I would tell her to leave him. You know, she walks in on Neil hanging a piece of art and she goes,
Hilarious scene.
"Why are you doing this?"
Yeah.
It's so funny.
she's like got her she's already pissed off about something else. He's like just doing this thing that she literally asked him to do. And it was like weeks ago. And he's just like, "I'm hanging it." And he's like, "It's kind of a weird piece of art. Do you not want it here?" And he's like, just like trying to respond to what he's doing and what she's like calling out. But she's on this whole other mind
Yeah.
track that she eventually does get to.
No, but he was like, "It looks like a deflated boob."
Yeah.
Oh no, it was just funny.
It was a weird piece.
It was, and then she was like, "I want you to stop being so nice to me if you're not going to marry me." Like, what?
Yeah. If I was a guy, I'd be sitting there just like, how do I resolve this situation? Like, what does she want to hear right now?
That's a really confusing thing to say. Like,
You can't start a conversation like that.
no, this is so it's just so unhinged, honestly, because yeah, like she knows Neil's stance on marriage. Like that's probably been his stance from early on. They've been together for 7 years. This isn't news. It's just like coming up because her sister's getting married.
Right.
And it's been 7 years, you know, and she's like, "Well, you can't treat me with this well if you're not going to marry me." It's like, what? I don't know.
Sorry, I'll start treating you worse.
Yeah, I mean, look, and I relate to this character. I was in a relationship where I thought someone would change their mind and I thought that he would change his mind if I showed him that I was worthy of being his wife. Basically, I would like try to just like outdo myself every time as a girlfriend
And
to
how'd that
like.
work out for you?
It did not work.
Oh.
It did not work. It just made
Did
me
you
feel
tell
very.
him you were doing this?
No, it just made me feel very resentful. No, but he
Oh.
knew I wanted to get married. And, also just like I thought he would change his mind. I thought, oh, like we're in our 30s now, like he'll change his mind because we're in our 30s, like just age and maturity. But no, that's yeah, the way this storyline ended, I think was the least realistic of all the storylines.
You mean them breaking up, then
And then
him
getting
just
married.
like showing up?
Yeah,
Oh, the ending was absurd. That
we'll
was
get
just
there.
written for this movie. Like that's not it didn't even there wasn't even he didn't change his mind. He didn't learn a lesson. He was just like,
No.
"Okay, I'll do it now."
The second she said, I'm not okay getting married, he wouldn't have turned around and then proposed.
Right.
He would have been like,
Absurd.
cool,
It's like,
and
"Okay,
then done
good."
nothing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
right. So Jen said that she didn't want to be seen as demanding. And it's like, and this is where that advice of don't be the cool girl comes from. Like, if you like being the cool girl, you're not going to get what you want. I think also another example of a cool girl in this movie is Ben, Bradley Cooper, who didn't want to get married, but was like forced into being married by Janine.
Right. He
Yeah.
has a really good line, which I think probably would resound with like a lot of folks, which is so Ben is talking to Neil at one point. They're talking about getting married and like whether or not they're ready. And Ben says, "You're an asshole if you date a girl for too long and don't marry her, and you're a dick if you're married before you're ready." And I think that's like a common sentiment. It's like, how do you solve that? If you're not ready and they're like, we have to do it now, it's like somebody has to give or
Yeah,
there
like
has to be
you have
some
to say you're not
bending,
ready and then break up.
I guess.
That's the only answer, which sucks.
But
But it's
like,
better than the alternative, which is the situation that they found themselves in.
I guess, but it's like instead of doing that, couldn't you say like, oh, well, in a few months, maybe I'll be ready? Or like, why do we have to get married this, like right now? I get it. They've already been together for 7 years and they've
Yeah, I
probably had
guess it's
this
just like, why
conversation.
do you need more time? That's just at that point, yeah, it's like even after a few years, like, why do you need more time? It's like at that point, it's not a issue with your partner; it's an issue within yourself. So yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to have to figure shit out for yourself, but like that has nothing to do. But then your partner is being like, "I'm not good enough." It's like
I
their
guess, yeah.
what goes through their mind. It's really interesting. I think this was it was an interesting thing to look at in this movie, and I'm glad they did. So then she goes out at a bar and she meets a guy, and she's trying new things at this point. We're in Act 2. A guy gives her his card and says like we'll be in touch. And
Yeah.
she's like, wait. Are you calling me? Am I calling you? Like, how are we gonna get in touch? And he's like, we'll figure it out. Like he's like being vague and walking and like leaving the
And she's
bar.
like, oh, still not clear. What are we doing? And then she's like, I'll tell you. You call me.
Right. And then her friend, she's with Janine, and she goes, please don't cyber stalk him, which I think, again, just a classically
Amazing.
2009 line of like, it's like, obviously we all do that now.
I just liked cyberstalk.
Sorry, cyber stalk. I know. It's like, that's such a weird way of phrasing that. Then we have a whole thing with Drew Barrymore, who is surrounded by all of her gay coworkers.
I did not like that office space. It was like, they were like, we should have some gay people in this. Let's make every single person in this office gay.
I know, they
And
couldn't
like
sprinkle in
maybe
the queerness. It had to be the queerness in the movie was like shoved into pockets, like her workplace, and then Connor was like he was like selling like houses to gay people, basically.
that being said, I'm trying to remember what she did, and most of the advertisements that she had were like very gay. They were like
I think she
strippers.
worked at like kind of like a Village Voice type place, like maybe like a queer publication.
So maybe that
That's probably why.
explains some of it, but it was just weird because that representation was just not good.
It's like they tried, but it's just not up to par.
Yeah.
Anyway, she talks. Anna's whole thing is that she's on the internet. She has a dating profile. She has MySpace. She's connecting with guys through texting, email, BlackBerry. She lists all of the different ways. Yeah.
So on MySpace, do you think she's like going and poking guys?
That's
that
a
she
Facebook
likes?
thing. But yes.
Oh man, I can't even remember.
Where have you been?
I haven't thought about MySpace for so many years until it came up in this movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I remember the top 8. Oh my gosh.
Oh my god,
Um,
I do. But this was okay. So this Mary Anna conversation was probably the best part of the movie. So Mary was saying, "I don't want to text," and she's like, "It's not just texting; it's email and voicemail and snail mail." And she's like, "None of it's working. I had a guy leave a voicemail for me at work. Then I called him back at home, and he emailed me to my BlackBerry, and then I text him to his cell, and then he emails me to my home account." I'm just like, how are you like
what? Yeah.
ending this conversation being like, now please, like, how did he get all these different contact
No, I
information?
know. It's yeah, but like when you think about it now, it's like you have your cell phone number, you have your email, you have Instagram, Snap, um,
I think it's way
maybe
worse
your
today.
WhatsApp. I don't know. There are a lot of different ways we can
Yeah.
communicate, Signal, like Facebook
Yeah.
Messenger. There are still a lot of ways we can connect. I think it's only gotten worse from
It's
2009.
much worse. But she ends that whole monologue and she says, now you have to go around checking all your portals and get rejected by 7 different technologies. So I want to hear what you had to think about this. Is this like even worse today? Are people feeling this way?
I mean, yeah, I think it is a little worse today because not only can you have so many different channels for connecting with people and staying connected because now back then you were just it was like you had to proactively reach out. Now we're following each other and there's this whole like I probably still accidentally following guys I went out with before you on my personal Instagram that I don't know. But it's like they're like, "Oh, she's still following me." And it's like there's this whole orbiting thing that's going on now
Hmm.
that we didn't have back then. So I think it's harder now.
Yeah, that makes
But I
sense.
should probably unfollow those people.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, probably at this point. So then we have also this moment with Anna just saying on her character for a second, where like she was so ahead of her time. Like she was saying, "Oh, I'm texting with this person so much. Um, but we've never met." And it's like, yeah, like you're breaking a cardinal rule of just don't text too much. You have to
Yep.
get to the meeting. And then she gets a voicemail of a guy playing guitar.
Oh, this was
And
so good.
he's like they had met, and then he was like leaving her a voicemail the next day, and he made up a song with her name in it, and everyone at work, like she's playing it, which also I don't know, like this is kind of
All of her
unhinged. She's playing
coworkers
at
are
work.
like, well, she was talking to her coworkers. It's like, I went on this date. He probably hasn't called me yet. And they're all like, check your voicemail. She's like, no, I mean, it's only been a couple hours and, he had things to do. And then, so she does it. And they're like, oh, it has to be on speakerphone, which is how we get this scenario. And then, he plays the song and it's like, oh, that's kind of cute. And then she goes to the next voicemail and he's playing the same song for another girl, but he accidentally called her again. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh man, I'm sure, like, I don't think this has happened to me on like a dating app, but like if you're just copy and pasting the same thing in and you forget to change the name, I'm like, oh, that's definitely happened to a lot of people.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think this is also the equivalent of like those. I mean, I feel like this has never happened to me that I know of, or I don't know that I don't know anyone who's done this, but like you hear of guys who just send good morning texts to every woman they're talking to, and it's like it's kind of that's what this reminded me of. But this is way more effort because this is
Yeah.
way more effort.
I
But that was really
really,
funny.
I really loved that voicemail because like he like does it and then like halfway through he's like, wait, what number did I call? It's like
Yeah.
that doesn't even make sense. Like the voicemail tells you who you're talking to. Like you wouldn't
I
get
don't
that
know.
far, but whatever. It's a movie.
It was funny. So then, okay, so that was like Anna's whole thing. Then a couple more things happen in Act Two before we wrap things up. Ben shows up to Anna's yoga class, and at the end, he applauds, which I thought was just hilarious.
It's like after the plane lands
Yeah,
and he's just
no,
like,
like, have I ever been in a yoga class where people applaud? I feel like I have. I feel like that has happened to me. Um,
okay, so this is what I wanted to ask. So when is he cheating on his wife? I don't think he's cheating in the grocery store when he's just talking to this girl.
no,
And then, she calls him and he's like, no, I'm not doing this. But then something happens where he's like, I'm going to find out what yoga class she teaches and I'm going to go there. And like clearly at this point, to me, this is where he's like cheating on his wife.
you think this counts as cheating? I
I
don't think
mean,
this
what
counts
was
as cheating
him?
yet.
If he wants to go to yoga, this is clearly not the only one he can go to. He's only going there for one reason.
But they haven't done anything.
I agree, but like that's why he's going is so something else can happen. Either he's going to try to make it happen or he's just like maybe I'll let her do something and I'll just respond to
Right. I
it.
guess yeah, it's pre-cheating.
Yeah.
it's it's definitely getting closer to cheating. It's definitely if it's the kind of thing like that you're scared to tell your partner, then you're in trouble at
And
that
he
point.
does like lie about it later.
He does. He does lie about it. So then they have the class, they're talking after, they're sitting by this like gym pool where I don't know why it's open or they're there, but it's like, okay. And then Ben's like, why can't we be friends? Can a married guy have a hot friend that's a girl, basically?
He's like already complimented her and commented on how hot she is like multiple times.
Yeah. And then, you know, I think Anna, she's like so dangerous. She's like, oh, I'm just going to take off all my clothes. Like, we're just friends, right? So I'm going to just take off my clothes in front of you. Like, friends don't do that, Anna. Come on.
And she jumps in the pool naked and she's like, so aren't you going to come in? He's like, I don't trust myself. Like, okay, so is he cheating yet? Like, where the line is definitely.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Like, if I found out you hung out with a female friend and they got naked in front of you, I'd be very confused. But because I know all your female friends, and then I would not feel very happy about that.
No, but like if this scene ended, he doesn't get in the pool. They don't like hook up. He goes and he like never goes back to this yoga class and never talks to her again. I guess it's fine.
Yeah.
But like he just continues this. She's a hot mess because she's the one really causing a lot of these problems. Like she knows, and she's like actively hitting on this married guy and is like trying to seduce him. She's like, oh, you're married, but you know, that doesn't matter and all this stuff. And it's like, oh, ScarJo, no.
Yeah, no, it's not great. We know it's trouble. So there's a moment after where Gigi's making out with the guy, and then she calls Alex in the middle of
least
her makeout.
Believable scene.
Yeah, this is your least believable scene. You could say it.
Okay. So she's like at this guy's house. They're making out, and then she like goes to the bathroom because he's being a little ambiguous about whether or not they're like going to see each other again in the future. And so naturally in the bathroom, she calls up Alex. What's his name? There's too many characters in this.
It's Alex. Yep.
She calls up Alex. The scene switches over to him. He's like making out with this girl in his apartment, and he sees this phone light up, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna stop making out with you to pick up this phone call from this stranger who I talked to once at a bar." And he's like, "Oh hey, yeah." It's like, "Oh, I can talk, yeah." And they like have this conversation about what she should do, and it's the most absurd thing. Like, why would Alex, who doesn't like this girl, stop making out with this girl that he's clearly very into to give life advice? It was absurd.
He doesn't know he likes Gigi yet.
And I'm pretty sure he likes the girl he was actively making out with.
Yeah, no, I mean, we hope so. You know, you're right. I think that was extremely, that was really unrealistic, but funny. It was a funny scene. He was like, hey, make him wait a little bit, like he's lying, you know, and I do look like he was right.
I think the conversation was fine, just like the context did not make any sense.
Yeah. So I want to get back, we're going to go back to our friends Ben and Janine, which is another unrealistic moment. You had a lot of thoughts about this moment, where basically Janine has been on to Ben the whole movie about Ben smoking cigarettes and sneaking cigarettes, and she's like really hell-bent on truth-telling, honesty. Of course, she attracted a liar into her life. I somehow manifested a man who lies. And they're in Home Depot. They're picking out tile, or they're picking out flooring.
Home Depot scene.
And she's like, I don't like the fake wood because it's not real. It's pretending to be real wood, but it's not. And then Ben reveals that he slept with someone, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. He does come clean, which was, I was surprised.
But he comes clean about the cheating and not the cigarettes, which is ultimately what does them in at the end.
Yeah. Well, and it's hard. I didn't like this part where we never got the like 1 second scene of him smoking a cigarette. So like we as the audience don't know if he's smoking. He's hanging out with his friend who is smoking. And so like he's going to smell like cigarettes probably. Maybe he has the guy's cigarettes in his pocket. That's like kind of a stretch, but like it could happen. But if they just had like the 1 second scene of him just like taking one puff of a cigarette, it could have been like, okay. So we don't really know. And she keeps accusing him and he keeps denying it. It's like, I can't tell if she's just really suspicious about this or if he's actually doing it.
Yeah. I mean, but also I like that we didn't know until the very end that he was, because she could have been just like,
yeah, it was hard to know if she was being like really neurotic about this, or if he was just lying.
So you had a lot of thoughts about the Home Depot reveal, and I felt like this was realistic. I felt that a couple could have a big reveal moment while shopping and out in public where you just can't hold it in anymore and you have to say it, even though you are in the middle of Home Depot in the flooring section. Like, I feel like that's where a
That
lot of
part was
breakups happen.
fine. Yeah, no, I thought that it happening there was funny because like literally he's holding two tile samples. He's like, which one? And she
Yeah.
picks one. He's like, that's the fake one, and it's so much cheaper. And she's like, well, I want the other one. It's like, but you literally just picked the other one.
Yeah.
She's like, I don't care.
Well, I would want the real one too, okay?
That's great. I can't wait to spend a lot of money on real wood floors. Anyway, but
But
the
no,
point,
but you didn't. What you found weird is that they like kept shopping or something. Like they just kept
yeah.
going.
Well, they like have this conversation, and he very much like clearly. It's hard to know if he knows this or not, but it seems like he's ready to like leave the relationship. He's like, I already talked to somebody. I can move out. And she's like, oh, you don't want to work through it? And he's just like, oh, wait, what you want to work through it? So like, it seems to me like he has done this. He's telling her basically so he can break up with her. And this is like the first step in that process. And she's just like, no, we're staying together. But the thing that I found hard to believe about this is that they just kept shopping. Like if you dropped some big bombshell on me, I'm not gonna be like, okay, let's go look at the light fixtures now. Like doesn't have to be some explosive moment, but I'm not gonna keep shopping at Home Depot. I'm gonna leave with
You're gonna
you
go
or
home in
without
like
you.
an Uber? Is that?
Maybe. Yeah, they did have one car. You brought that up. That was a good point. But
like
yeah,
they came together. So
get a taxi or just like, I don't know if I'd want to like have that conversation immediately or if
yeah,
I'd want like some space to separate and think about it.
good to know.
Yeah.
If you ever have a fight in Home Depot.
I don't want to have a fight at Home Depot.
I don't want to either.
Sounds awful.
So then, okay, so after that, we have this like crazy scene where Gigi has been invited by Alex to a house party and they're doing this party. And one of the most unrealistic things to me was how big this party was. I don't go to a lot of parties, but like, I was like, how are there so many people here? I don't know.
That apartment was packed.
It was
packed. Before
packed.
she goes to the party, she's talking to her friends and she's like, wait, is this a date? Oh.
Am I a date or am I a guest?
Yeah.
And then she turned into co-host. But also we have to, Alex, because Gigi was like, oh, am I like your co-host? And Alex was like, sure.
Well,
like,
he literally asked her to like get some more chips.
Which is weird. I think that's honestly a weird thing to ask.
It is weird, but then we later see that he's going around assigning a lot of people tasks.
Right.
So like,
that's true.
I don't agree. This is not a good party behavior.
No, I would never ask.
And it wasn't like he was like
to
overworked.
Mix a dip.
Yeah. He was like sitting there on his couch drinking a beer. And he's like, oh yeah, can you go do this? Like, no.
Honestly, that's like red flag behavior to me.
Well, Gigi's got a lot of problems in this movie. I think she, at a minimum, needs therapy and possibly, like a psychiatrist.
I mean, they all need therapy.
Yeah. But like.
Then at the end of the scene, it's just them two at the end. She waits until 3 a.m. for everyone to leave.
She cleans his entire apartment.
She takes out all the trash.
And she's quote unquote the co-host, which she's built up this entire delusion in her mind.
Right. All in her head. And I wrote down that I'm like, okay, I don't care how hot you are. I am not staying until 3 a.m. at your party to talk to you. I am leaving at 11.
And he's like on the couch playing video games with some girl.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, it's 3. I should get out of here. And then she goes up to him and she's like, I can't believe we're dating now.
Right.
And he's like, what the hell are you talking about? And she's just like, the signs. I saw all the signs. And he's like, no, literally, I just told you. We had this conversation. I do not want this. Why?
Yeah, I want to talk about this for a second because like I think it is interesting how, well, even though this goes against what she was taught growing up, but I think in real life, when a guy is nice to us, sometimes we're like, oh, does he like me? Like that is one of the first thoughts, I think, for a lot of women. It's like, oh, is he into me? Is there like a vibe? Especially if you're single, especially if you're actively looking for a relationship, any guy who's like remotely nice to you that you think that is single could be a potential.
Yeah. And the situation is weird. Like 2 of you alone, 3 a.m. after this party, like there could be vibes.
That's when that would happen.
Yeah.
That's exactly when that would happen.
At no point in this movie has he like hit on her in any way.
Right. But it's confusing because I guess she hasn't really had a guy just treat her with respect, which is what Alex does throughout the movie. He just is her friend, plain and simple, right? They call each other, even weird times.
They call each
You
other
know,
while they're both making out with other people
they've hung
to ask
out.
about
Yeah.
dating advice.
But it's yeah. I did think that was interesting. It's just like can a guy just treat women with respect without it just being without it having any threads of romance or I don't know.
Yes.
And
The
yes,
answer is
but it's
yes. I
like
will
sad
speak
that we
for all
turn it
men
into
here.
that. Yeah. Also, do you think that Alex was being confusing in this movie, like at this point?
I don't think so. I think the one thing, like, he didn't pick up, we didn't mention it, but he had like arranged a date for Gigi, and the date didn't show up because he got the dates confused. And he's supposed to show up on a Thursday and it was a Tuesday or whatever. Um, and so in Gigi's mind, she's like, oh, he set up that fake date so we could go out. Because what? Why not just ask you out? But okay, let's move on from that.
Also, a little. Well, I guess I kind of like that move, like in terms of dating in general. If you have a friend that you want to set someone up with, I do like it being a casual friend hang. Like you don't have to set them up on the date by
Right.
themselves.
No,
It's
that's
like,
great.
oh, I'm gonna go to the bar with my friend Bill. You should come meet him. I think that's actually a really great way to meet people
Right.
and do a setup without it being so serious.
I like it a lot. It's way better to be like, yeah, you come if you want. If you don't like him, like, there's no
Right. It's just
expectations.
whatever. You're just hanging out.
Yeah.
And then okay, so then they get into this whole fight because like she comes on to him basically is like, oh, we're almost dating, and he's like, what are you talking about? And he goes into this whole rant, and you called him a dick at this point. Where he's
He was
like,
very insensitive in this
yeah,
rant.
he was not being nice, right? But he's
But
like, you're
also, it
delusional.
was 3 a.m. and they were probably both blackout drunk because they drank so many beers in those scenes.
In real life, that's how that would happen. But he was like, wow, you just twist all these stories in your head. And then she goes on a rant and she says, well, at least I'm trying. And a question I wrote down was like, do you have to make an ass out of yourself to fall in love? Like that was her point of view. It's like, at least I'm trying. Like I might make an ass of myself, or like at least I'm closer than you.
Yeah. I made I don't know. You don't have to be an asshole to fall in love.
No, not asshole. Make an ass of yourself.
Oh, well, you know what? Let me do that right now in this podcast. I don't think so. I disagreed with both of them in this scene. I thought what was interesting about her, and you picked up, I think I said something when this scene was happening. Like she's like, I'm so much closer to finding love than you. And I was like, is there a finding love progress bar I should be aware of? Like, I wasn't aware that I could look up and be like, I'm 90% of the way there. Like, what does this mean? Is this how people are really thinking?
Well, I think that she was commenting more on her openness and that she's at least trying and she's reaching for it where we never even learned if he was really looking for a
Yeah.
relationship. He
He
seems a
never
little
like,
more of a playboy, like fuckboy type guy, but
he was a manager at a bar. And
I
like,
don't know.
we saw him hook up with one of his coworkers, which was not a good move.
No.
And he
And some other
rejected her in
girl.
not the best way. And then some other girl. But like, it seemed like, I don't know, we never got his perspective. But it seemed
Yeah.
like he was fine. He wasn't having any issues.
Well, he was okay. His character was clearly the advice giver of the self-help book, right?
Yeah, he
That
was
was
the
his
wise
character.
sage for
Yeah,
sure.
he's the wise sage. Yeah, and I thought that was I don't know. So is there a progress bar? No, but I do think that there is such a thing as someone putting in more effort than other people into like finding their person. But I do think Gigi was putting in too much effort. It was like
I
her
also
whole
think
life.
she was totally projecting. Like,
Yeah.
there's no reason to think that Justin Long wanted a girlfriend. Like, Gigi desperately wanted a boyfriend, and that was a big problem for her.
That was the kind of the climax of their relationship. Then we have the climax of Janine and Ben, where basically Anna goes to Ben's office to hook up, right? So he's like having an affair in his office.
Yeah.
He locks the door. She's like, they just had some kind of meeting, and he
It went so
immediately
well. Ha ha
rips
ha.
her clothes
Let's
off,
make out.
and they start like making out on his desk, and then his wife shows up and knocks on the door. He shoves Anna in a closet. He like gets himself together, and Janine is there like trying to rekindle the spark in their
Yeah.
marriage and the romance, which I was like, wow, I couldn't imagine anyone in that relationship is in the mood after in this moment of like dealing with
Yeah,
infidelity.
they haven't talked about it. Let me just come to your office and try to have sex with you.
Yeah, horrible.
What?
And then oh my god, poor Anna in the closet.
One thing which doesn't excuse his behavior but does kind of explain it is we do find out that they haven't had sex in their marriage for years or something of that nature.
Right.
And so,
Which sucks.
yeah. And so it's like, okay, it doesn't excuse it, but now I understand why this guy's like in this relationship where he's not getting something he needs. So that's why he's out
But he
there
doesn't
looking for
want to be
this.
married. Like
Well, that was a
we
different
learn,
fundamental problem.
yeah, it's like also Janine forced him into the marriage because he felt like it was just what he had to do. He's like, you're an asshole if you date a girl for a long
Right.
time and you don't marry her. That's his belief. So he just thought he was doing the right thing, even though it wasn't what he wanted to do at all. And I think that's why he cheated.
Yeah. But yeah,
And the sex part.
so yeah, doesn't have sex with his mistress. His wife
Has
comes
sex
in,
with his wife.
has sex with her. She's like trying to be hot. And then we get like some weird like shot of ScarJo in the closet, like listening to this.
Yeah.
Um, and then that wraps up. She's like, okay, so let's go home. And he's like, no, I really need to do some more work.
Yeah. And then
Because
she's
ScarJo's in
like,
the closet.
I know. And then she leaves. And then so Janine's like seems like she's like feeling better about things. She goes home, she's cleaning up, she's putting the house together, she's putting the picture frames up, all the things. And then she finds the cigarettes
The
in
cigarettes
Ben's
in the
pocket.
pocket. The only pair of pants left out has the
Yeah.
cigarettes.
Right. And then your favorite part of the movie happens, which is when she takes a mirror off the wall, shatters it.
She
You
just
screamed at this point.
it was so good. She's like, is this like, this weird mirror with like ceramic or something? And she just takes it and just slams it on the ground. It explodes. It like shows it and it's just like in a billion pieces. It was amazing. And then I love this scene because she like looks down at it. She walks out the door. The shot stays on there a little too long. And then she comes back with like a broom and starts sweeping up. And I was like, oh,
It was good. That shot was so good. Like it didn't cut at all, and it really felt that felt really real in that moment.
yeah.
She's a good actress. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was really well done.
And then at the same time, we have back with ScarJo in the closet. She comes out and she's like pissed off at him. It's like,
Yeah,
how dare you have sex with your wife? It's like,
I would
wait,
be
what?
pissed.
Aside from that, like, yes, that would be upsetting if you were sleeping with someone and they put you in a closet and then they had sex with someone else and you just like had to sit there and you're like shame and listen to this.
I would leave I would ruin that moment. Are you kidding? It's ruined anyway.
Yeah. But that's like the difference between like being like, this is over between us and like, I'm also going to mess up your other relationship.
And clearly, look, Janine was better off without Ben. So that's her last straw, though. She decides she basically packs up all his clothes, leaves it out, buys a pack of cigarettes.
Throws all of his clothes off the balcony.
Yeah.
This whole thing. And then when he comes home later,
They're like neatly.
you're like expecting a pile and she's like meticulously folded everything.
Yeah. And she has a note
yeah.
where it's like, have fun with these cigarettes. By the way, I want a divorce.
Yeah.
Like,
okay.
Yeah. So that's how we close out that one. Then we have Neil and Beth. So Beth went to her sister's wedding. Her dad had a heart attack. Beth is like taking care of everyone and no one else is helping. Neil shows up and helps her. And that's like when they start getting back together. Then Beth goes to visit Neil on his boat. And one of the I wrote this down. It's crazy that Neil will commit to having a boat, but not marriage.
Also, like what is the like wealth of these people? He's got like a yacht that he's like.
They all have massive apartments.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. They have such these big problems.
Yeah. Anyway, it was just really funny. So they're sitting on the boat and Beth reveals to him, she's like, look, fine, if you want to get married, like that's fine. You just have to make sure you're okay with my hair getting stuck in the drain. Yeah, and I want to be able to eat wheat thins in bed.
Yeah. It's like, okay. It's like, did he ever say you can't do that before?
Like what?
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's so irrelevant. So and she's like, and no more cargo shorts, which I understand. So that seems to be resolved. And I think in real life, that would be the moment where like that would be the end of it. If one person accepts and makes the compromise, then you don't need to, I don't know. I mean, I don't think you should do that. I don't think you should say, it's okay, we don't have to get married if you don't genuinely feel that way. You need to leave if you want to get married.
But if you're willing to be okay with it, then great. That should have just, like, in reality, yes, that was the end of that, like, relationship for the movie. Yes. But they had to shove in the one more scene.
I know.
And so, do you want to go into that or?
No, we're almost done here. So then that's that climax. So then the other climax is with Connor and Anna. So the situationship in the movie. So they're very on again, off again at this point because basically Connor breaks up with her at some point. He like goes to her. He's like, I can't do this. Like, you don't know what you want. And then because Anna's coming off this thing with Ben where he just, left her in a closet while he had sex with his wife.
She immediately goes
she's
back
like,
to him.
she's like, yeah, you know what? I'll be your girlfriend now. And
Yeah.
Connor's like, oh my God, this is so sick. And I thought it was interesting.
There's a great shot of them in bed together, and he's just like all smiling and
clinging.
happy. Yeah. And she's just like, oh, what have I done?
Yeah. Then Connor does one of the most delusional things in the movie where he like takes her to an apartment or house he's thinking of buying. And he's like, well, I was thinking like, if you like the house too, like, then I should probably definitely get it. Like, do you like the house? And they just started dating. It was so weird. And she was
like, it wasn't like he was just like going out to find this house, though. He was a real estate agent. So like
true,
it kind of made sense. Oh no, the conversation was crazy.
Yeah. And then she is like, I can't do this. That's what scared her off. Obviously that would scare anyone off.
That would scare me if you brought me to a house. Be like, what if I buy this house and we live here?
And the night before we had decided we're boyfriend girlfriend. I don't know.
Yeah. Like, huh. Weird of you to make all of these assumptions.
And I was thinking about that their situationship compared to her and Ben. And I think what was interesting is like obviously Bradley Cooper is really hot, but I think that they showed this moment of like when they met at the grocery store where they were being vulnerable and open and like they had this connection. I don't think she ever had those kinds of conversations with Connor. They never had a deeper emotional connection of any kind.
No, we didn't see the beginning of their relationship. So
yeah, but it's like they had sex once or something, and then he just kept chasing her, and she kept just kind of being confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Finally, at the very end, we have Gigi. She finally goes on the date with this mystery guy that Alex wanted to introduce her to, and then they end the date. She's like, I had a great time. And we can see she's transformed. She doesn't care if he likes her. She's not calling her friend immediately being like, oh my God, I think I met the one. She's just like, okay, that was a good date. Moving on, which is like healthy, right? We did it. But then Alex shows up and he's like, oh my God, I just realized like I am so into you.
Absurd.
Well, also before this, I wanted to ask you before this, Alex realizes he's into her because his coworker's like, well, who's the girl? Because he's acting all weird. And I wanted to ask you, how do you act when you are strung out?
I mean, he was making the sort of mistakes that you make when you're strung out. He was like mixing up people and little details.
Yeah.
I mean, you tell me, how do I act?
I just remember after our fourth date where we got home, like we each went home and we were texting. And you were like, I just went to the grocery store for 20 minutes and I bought cinnamon. like you walked around Safeway for that long and all you bought was cinnamon. I think that was a pretty good example of being strung out over someone.
Yeah, I guess so. I remember that, yeah.
I thought that was really cute. I just remember, like being feeling really giddy and just, not wanting to work at all. But yeah, so they have this whole culmination of their relationship where it's like Alex realizes that she's what he was looking for, and Gigi starts throwing back all of his rules at him. Well, it's like, what if I'm not the exception? I'm the rule. Well, what about this and all that? It's like Alex is like, no, like I was wrong or something.
I don't know what about Gigi he found appealing. I can't imagine.
Jennifer Goodwin, not your type.
This character was awful. I don't know.
Yeah,
it, like no redeeming qualities. Sad.
And that's the end of the movie. We have, so basically how the characters end up. We have Gigi and Alex together playing some weird version of Pictionary or Taboo or something. They're like hosting all their friends who are not all white.
Okay, but interesting thing about that is that scene, the clothes they're wearing, the same clothes they're wearing at the party they showed. So that was actually during that party that interview happened.
Yeah, I just hated what Jennifer Goodwin was wearing in that.
Yeah, I don't know
anyway, so they end up as a couple, great. They're like hosting people, so fun. We have Beth and Neil. He proposes to her by hiding a ring in his cargo pants.
Love it. Again, all the men seem to leave their pants off with like one important thing in them. And they're the only pants in the whole room.
A ring. Anyway, we have Janine by herself hanging an unshattered mirror on the wall in her own apartment. We have Ben sitting outside Anna's yoga class, not going in. He can't seem to face her. And Anna's like singing in a bar by herself. And the whole time the narrator's saying, like, maybe your happy ending is you're by yourself. Maybe your happy ending is this. Maybe your happy ending is that. And it's like just showing where all these characters end up after the movie. And that's how it ends.
Yay.
Let's talk about the main messages. All right. This movie, I feel like invented or reinforces if he wanted to, he would.
It's very explicit. They literally say that.
Pretty much. I mean, I think Anna also is an example of this. If she wanted to, she would, right? And she did, well, not with Connor.
When she felt like it.
Yeah, I've talked about the if he wanted to, he would on my Instagram and on this podcast. And I don't think that is good dating advice. It's too binary. It's too finite. It's not always the case. You know, sometimes you want to and you don't for so many reasons.
Oh, there's plenty of things that you might want to do and no, you should not. That's fine.
The other message is don't chase guys. So don't chase people, actually. I think Connor does some chasing.
I see.
Yeah. And I think that's true. I like that message. Don't chase.
I mean, there's this whole thing about like encouraged versus programmed behaviors. And like Gigi's allegedly like programmed by this one conversation with her mother about the dog poop boy versus all of her friends. Like, I don't know. For me, if I could just say one thing about this movie is if you are having your friends who are like trying to delude themselves, don't encourage them. Stop doing this if you're doing this.
Right. Yeah. Listen up. If you have a single friend, please don't tell them stories, lore about relationships that worked out. It's not helpful.
No.
I mean, even on this podcast, when I talk about how our relationship played out, it's like, yes, this happened for me, but it doesn't mean it's going to play out the same way for anyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it does give us hope. And I think it's kind of sad because like hearing other people's success stories, it is a main ingredient of having hope in dating. It's like, well, look around you. Like people are finding love, but it also can make you feel horrible. It's like, well, why aren't I finding love? You know?
I think at some point near the end of this movie, they're saying something like, oh, you know, it's not okay to give up hope or something. And it's like,
yeah, they did say that. Yeah.
Like, no, you can give up hope. And
you're allowed to give up hope.
You can take a break. That's fine. And like the end of this movie is not the end of these people's lives. It's been like a couple weeks from the beginning to end. So like, we don't know where these people actually end up.
And there was a whole thing in this movie about the rule versus the exception, right? Are you the exception or are you the rule? Like the rule is he's not into you, but the exception is maybe he is, right? Oh, he didn't call you for a week, but then he did, and then you got married. Like that's the exception. And I just think, do you think everyone ends up with their exception? Like what are we supposed to make of this?
I think this is just nonsense.
It's nonsense.
Yeah. No one's going to tell an exciting story about, oh, look, these two people, it was so dramatic. They swiped right on the dating app and then they went out and they liked each other. What a story. It's like, no, you don't tell.
Right.
That's not the story you tell. Like you tell the weird stories that like, I don't think should be inspiring necessarily. Like I wouldn't want to tell the story like they did where like we broke up and then my dad died of a heart attack and then we got back together and we got married.
You're right. I think Beth is the exception story because he didn't want to get married for 7 years, then he changed his mind.
For no apparent reason.
Because they broke up and he missed her. And he's like, well,
he didn't like living on the boat.
Yeah, that'll do it.
He's literally at one point, he's like, so can I come home now?
Yeah, fuck this boat. No. I think also the thing about rom-coms in general is they do paint this beautiful rosy picture of what it looks like when you are the exception and what it looks like when someone's standing in the rain holding the boombox over their head. And it's like we do all secretly deep down want that kind of devotion and like dedication because it is romantic. It's dramatic, you know, but I think it's not realistic. And we need to just level with ourselves. So that's not how a lot of like long-term relationships start. It's just you meet on Hinge and you just hang out and date and like each other.
Oh, the drama.
Yeah.
I think the unrealistic relationships here were Alex and Gigi at the end. That didn't make any sense. Like, why are they dating now? Because they're both single, I guess?
No, because she stopped giving him attention and he wanted to get her.
Okay, that's a little realistic. But like, it seemed like he had plenty of other options. I don't know why Gigi was the one for him. But we never got to see his side of it. And then, like, Neil proposing was
Yeah, that was
not
unrealistic. That
real.
was very unrealistic. Yeah, and then the last message I wrote down was just like the general obsession with marriage, and that's a true that goes for a lot of rom coms.
There
Just
was a scene where Janine is talking, I think, to Gigi at their workplace, and Gigi talks about some date, and Janine's like, "Let's go look at your wedding destination." And it's just
I
like,
hated that.
what the
I know.
hell is
I
this?
hated that so much. Yeah, it's. Ugh, I don't think that to me. I don't think people are doing that. I think there's some
I think we
version of
know
that where
people are
it's.
doing that.
Well, I think there's a difference between like evaluating a date to see if you think they're the one versus like let's plan the wedding.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
that was so wild. I don't even know.
So I'm gonna share some thoughts that came in from Instagram. This is what you guys said, and so a lot of people said this movie invented if he wanted to, he would. Like this is like a big if he wanted to, he would movie. Um, the spark is anxiety because deep down you know that you're more into it than they are. And then we do have Alex. He does a whole rant about like how the spark is made up by men because women love drama.
I don't think the spark is made up by men.
No,
If anything, I think it's made up by women.
you think it was made up by women? I
I
think the
don't.
spark is a real thing. I just don't think it's the thing. And we definitely
Yeah,
talked about that on the podcast. Another lesson you guys learned from this movie is you should have more respect for yourself and move on from that situationship. Yes.
absolutely.
We forgot to mention in the end, Connor ends up with Mary,
Oh,
Drew
right.
Barrymore.
The
And
best.
they're so cute. The
Yeah,
best ending.
yeah. Even though they're like kind of work associates,
I think
but
it was the perfect situation.
we don't know
They
if
work.
they end up together either. It's just like they talk to each other in real life one time. It's exactly
Yeah.
what Mary always wanted.
Yeah. Another lesson you guys shared was that we shouldn't get overexcited too quickly, which is
Great.
the main message of my entire podcast.
Advice that Gigi desperately needs to take home.
Yeah. Stop being Delulu and pay attention to his actions. Also, something we
100%.
talk about a lot. And stop wasting time deciphering their intentions, which is, again, what the book was the point of the whole book that this is based on is that message. So I think that it did a good job portraying these messages. And ultimately, I guess when we think about these messages, it's a lot of the advice is pretty solid, unfortunately.
Yeah, but like, I don't know, my take on a lot of these books, too, is like, you could have just written those 5 sentences down and been like, there you go.
But it's hard to internalize. I
Yeah.
think we need to spend more time with that advice to let it sink in. But yeah, I think it's weird. I think that this movie, it's like the endings don't teach us the right thing, but the first and second act are packed with realistic advice.
The ending was like, oh, wait, this is a movie. We need
Right.
to end it.
Yeah, it's like you have to give everyone happy endings or like bittersweet endings, I guess.
Sure.
Otherwise, it's not a rom-com anymore. I guess like, yeah, the realistic endings of this movie would be like Gigi and Alex like don't talk anymore, really. Like why he came back to her, that's unrealistic.
Yeah.
Beth and Neil wouldn't have gotten married. I think
I feel
Ben
like
and
Beth would have still harbored this desire to get married. Neil would have not wanted to do it, and they would have just
yeah,
broken up eventually.
right.
Or Beth would have just put up with it for the rest of her life. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Janine and Ben would have really broke up.
Yeah.
Connor and Anna probably would have stayed in a situationship for
Probably.
like 5 more years.
Yeah.
And
I was thinking
and then
the
Drew
same
Barrymore
thing.
would have just like gotten to a 7-year text relationship with someone who catfishes her. Like that's probably the realistic ending for her storyline. Yeah. So okay, what's your rom-com versus real life rating for this?
What's the scale?
So the scale is rom-coms 1, like it's the most delusional thing ever that is completely unrealistic in any way, versus real life is that's a 5. Like real life, a 5 is like it's a documentary and it's just someone's love life.
It's hard starting with this one because there are, like, we just went over all of them. I think some of them are very realistic and some of them are very much not. And I don't want to rate each of these relationships because there's way too many of them. But
Yeah.
it's like a 2 for me. It's
Mhm.
closer to rom-com than real life. So yeah, I'd say a 2 out of 5.
I gave it a 3 out of 5 because I think even though the endings were very much rom-com, there were a lot of moments in here and lessons that were real and applicable to real life. but I guess the endings have more impact, right? The happily ever after moment is way more impactful than the like journey to get there, which is unfortunate. But yeah, I think there's some good advice in here that actually resonates, except for when we get to the end.
Yeah. So just, turn it off an hour and a half in.
Okay. Yeah, it's like with all movies, take it with a grain of salt. This is not how relationships are necessarily supposed to unfold. But I think, again, the approach of the characters in dating does align with a lot of things I talk
Yeah.
about.
I was thinking, like, I don't think I want any of these relationships the way they unfold in the movie. Like, I wouldn't want that, any of those. They're all bad.
Yeah. Yeah, agree. So what are some of the main ways that this would be different if it was made in 2024?
Well, no more MySpace, obviously. Not even Facebook. I mean, it's got to be Instagram's going to be in there. You're going to have like Hinge and Tinder and all the dating apps. And, Gigi's not obsessively checking her voicemail anymore. Now she's obsessively checking her 8 dating apps and seeing like, there's no messages from the guys.
That's so true. Ben and Anna meet on Instagram and not at a grocery store.
Yeah. And like, I think that would be an actually interesting thing. And I don't know if it'd be a good movie or not, but like, because you're just looking at 2 people like messing each other on their phones. But I feel
people
like,
sitting on their couches.
Yeah. But I feel like they would have been like sexting and like maybe he'd send like a dick pic or something. I don't know.
Right. So true. I think Beth, instead of her sister being married, it would be like all of her friends are getting engaged on Facebook.
Yeah.
That's how that happens.
Should we get like 3 notifications about different friends on the same like day? Like everyone's getting engaged.
That's how it is. When I scroll through my feed, everyone's having babies. It's like every person I know is getting married this year, including us. So
true. Hopefully there have been more like discussions about mental health because some people definitely needed some assistance here.
Half of the cast would be
in therapy.
Like, in therapy, I was going to say queer, and I was going to say not white.
Yeah, again, I don't know why they picked Baltimore.
You can replace a lot of these characters with queer characters.
Yeah.
It would still work.
I mean, I hate what happens a lot now in modern films. I feel like you'll have one character who's like, I'm black, I'm queer, there's 12 other things, I'm mentally ill, and it's just like, I'm in the movie for 13 seconds. Bye.
Yeah.
It's like,
I know.
That doesn't help.
It doesn't help. No, I mean, it's like diversity in films are so important, but it's like the way it's done really matters.
Yeah,
obviously, this movie did not give a shit. Yeah. So I hope you enjoyed this first episode of a rom-com versus real life. If you have any thoughts, you can please DM me on Instagram at dating.intentionally. You can leave a comment below if you are watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify. And I just want to thank you so much for listening. Thanks for trusting me. I hope this was fun for you to listen to. And don't forget, you are doing great. I'd love it if you share this episode with someone who is navigating dating and might need a little confidence boost or some tough love, or if they love movies. And if any of these episodes have helped you in your journey, you can help me by leaving a stunning review on Apple or giving Dating Intentionally 5 stars on Spotify. I'd really appreciate it. Once again, I'm Talia.
And I'm Johnny.
This has been Dating Intentionally, and I'll catch you next time.
Bye.